Wonderful. Are you a business owner or a member of SBA or?
Oh, yeah. I've been a member of SB a very long time. I am very close to total retirement. I'm semi-retired, so I just kind of floating in and out a little bit.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Kay, you can tell a little bit about who you are and what you do if you'd like.
For the past 29 years, I've been a food service distributor for government. I do government contract work for primarily for corrections. I sell to the schools, senior centers, jails, prisons, and most of it is bid work.
All right. And for Kay Williams and anybody else that wants to share your contact information, we encourage you to put it into the chat box, but it looks like we're about to start.
Okie dokie.
For those of us in the Zoom, you might want to all mute. I might have made that call a little early. They're still setting up.
People ask questions here.
All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Everyone in the Zoom world, can you hear me over there? All right. My name is Sarah Sorensen, and we're going to call this Smyrna Business Association April Luncheon to order. I will start this morning with our invocation and our pledge from Pastor Shell Osborne.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and members of the SBA. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now, if you'd like to join me in a moment of prayer, I'll invite you to do so. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this wonderful day that you've given to us. We're told in your word that this is the day that the Lord has made, and we can rejoice and be glad in it. Lord, I thank you for the Smyrna Business Association and all of its members, their collective efforts to improve the quality of life here in this great city. Lord, we pray that as we as the association enter into this meeting today, that you would help us and guide us and direct us so that every decision that's made and every relationship that is established and strengthened would be essentially for the betterment of this great city in which we live, work, play, and worship. And Father, we thank you for all that you've done and all that you're going to be doing in the days to come. And while others would offer their prayer in another name, it's my honor today to offer my prayer in the name of my Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen and amen.
To replay this message, press 1.
Sarah, we need unmuted.
Sorry about that. I'd also like to recognize and thank the SBA board for all of their work, especially Barb Allen and Gloricel Rodriguez, who head up our education committee. Thank you so much for all the work that you've done on putting together the scholarship program this year. We really appreciate it. And we thank our sponsors and our members. If you recall, during 2020, we had 9 months where we had no paid events. And it's because of our members and our sponsors that we were able to still do our scholarship and leadership awards this year. So thank you so much, everyone, for your support. I also want to recognize that Pastor Shell Osborne will serve as chaplain for our organization for 2021. Many of you may have a support system to go to in times of need, but if you find yourself needing guidance, needing prayer or support, please feel free to reach out to Pastor Shell Osborne. His contact information is on the slide and it's on the SBA website. Pastor Shell Osborne serves as the chaplain for the city, the police, and the fire departments, and he has graciously offered to do the same for any members of our organization who may need some support or guidance. Next, I'd like to turn to our sponsors for today. First, I'm going to turn it to David Monroe with Fairbanks Construction Services.
Well, thanks, everybody. Most of the Fairbanks folks that wanted to be here to present are actually very busy and going great guns in landscaping and construction. So Fairbanks is about a 25-year-old company. It's headed up by Joel Powell, who lives over here on Bank Street and has lived in downtown Smyrna for almost 50 years of his 47 years of life. So he's wonderful, takes pride in a lot of the work he's been doing. And anyway, Fairbanks Property Services is different than Fairbanks Construction Services. So let's just talk about today. If you need lawn care, it's a total package that he takes care of homes like this one on the corner of Powder Springs and Hughes Street. It's lawn maintenance, weekly and bi-weekly, total cleanup, pine straw, mulch, landscaping. You can see the list. It's pretty comprehensive. They're not just, as they tell you, blow, mow, and an edge. He really does take pride in the yards that he has done. Right now, we're doing a little over 60 yards on a full-time basis, and he's got room to do a little bit more when he can. What's the next one? Okay, so 14 bi-weekly now and 30 weekly as of right now. So he has capacity to do a few more. Go ahead. And then if you need help, we have a full-time person that's there, Crystal. She actually is a graduate of Osborne, and she is attending college while she works with us. She's, well, just a delight to work with, and she's studying to be a teacher, and you should see her bulletin board. It has, I mean, it looks like she's a teacher. And so just the last slide is an update on home building. Most of you know that Joel is also doing home building in downtown Smyrna and West Cobb. One of the things that is just, many of you may or may not know, as of a year ago, they stopped foreclosures throughout our country. So we get our inventory from resales, from new construction, and we also get it from for foreclosures. Well, they're not going to start foreclosures again till July. So when you wonder what's going on with the housing market, we just have a huge lack of inventory. But also the big deal too is the cost has gone up. For us to do a framing package last year at this time, it cost us $10.95 a square foot. You see on the screen right now, it's between $24 and $25 per square foot. So if you're wondering what's happening with housing prices, this is what it is. So think of Fairbanks, not only for landscaping, but also any kind of remodel, construction, or new construction. Last year, Joel put in 8 pools in houses in downtown Smyrna. So let us know if we can help you. Thank you.
Thanks, David. And our second sponsor for today's lunch is Life Church, Smyrna Assembly of God. And Pastor Osborne is on our Zoom screen, so you can turn your attention to the monitors. We'll hear from him.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And to the members of the SBA, it's a joy. I've been a member also for several years. And I'll just give you just a quick kind of a drive-by, if you will, of our church. We actually were founded in the home of a family who lived on North Matthews Street 68 years ago, which, if you're not familiar, that's right off of Hawthorne. And over the past 68 years that we've been here in the city of Smyrna, we've had a couple of relocations. We're now located on, and have been for about 35 years now, on King Springs, right next door to Griffin Middle School and right across the street from Ryan Park. It's an opportunity here for us, I should say a little bit differently. The opportunities for us as a local church have continued to grow and expand, in particular over the past, I'd say about 15, 16 years, as we just made an intentional effort to do all that we could to be an even better neighbor in our community. Much like as individuals, if we have people move into our apartment complex or our neighborhood, we try to extend ourselves and introduce ourselves and just become neighborly. Well, in a similar way, about 16, 17 years ago, we wanted to make sure that we were being as good of a neighbor here in the city of Smyrna as possible. And so we've developed over the course of time what we call community partnerships, which are relationships that we have with other organizations here in the city, from Ryan Park across the street to schools and private businesses, city government, things of that nature, to where we just simply ask the question, what are you doing that we can help you do? And oftentimes that means providing volunteers, sometimes providing financial resources. There are times when we host events here on our campus for these organizations, and we just try to recognize and acknowledge we can't do everything, but we can partner with other organizations to help them do what they're doing and maybe make a difference in our city. And so in particular, we've developed partnerships very active through the Cobb Chamber. We're partners in education with King Springs Elementary and Griffin Middle School and Osborne High School. We're kind of unofficial partners with a host of other schools like Belmont Hills. We partnered with our police department back earlier this year in providing 300 coats to the kids there at Belmont Hills. And we do cleanup at schools, and we provide other types of things like graduation gifts for Haven Academy at Skyview and Campbell High. We've provided a speaker, and we support their athletic programs by providing bottles of water and Gatorade and protein powder and breakfast biscuits and things of that nature. We just love being a part of this city, love having an opportunity to help other organizations, and it's a real joy to be a part of the Business Association as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And next, I'd like to invite up Andrea Worthy, who is the Director of Economic Development here in Smyrna, for the Smyrna Update.
Thank you all. Hello, roomies, and hello, Zoomies out there. Good to see everyone. Good to have you all participate today. So I just have a couple of announcements from the city perspective. First of all, city offices are closed tomorrow for the Good Friday holiday observance. So if you have some business for the city, perhaps want to get that taken care of today. The second thing I wanted to announce is, after asking the Department of Public Health for a while for some vaccines specifically for our Smyrna residents, the city this week began receiving some of those vaccine doses. We announced earlier this week on social media that you could sign up for those vaccine doses. We did sell those out. They are being given today, actually, but there will be potentials in the future. So I encourage you to get on the city's social media accounts so that you can follow along when we get our next level of vaccines, because we want to try to give it a shot, Smyrna, and everybody do their part to make sure we can get out of this pandemic. I certainly am looking forward to that. This is actually my second in-person virtual hybrid event with the Business Association. And so I'm looking forward to having more of these perhaps later this summer. I don't have any other official announcements from the city, but I can tell you as we're starting to look at the potential for the new normal this fall, city staff are working diligently to see what types of events we can have when and how we can do that safely, because I think everyone is very excited to try to get back to some type of new normal. So thank you for participating today. Welcome all of you on Zoom.
Next, we're going to turn attention to our education program today. And I am pleased to have Barb Allen, who's our education chair with the SBA, to tell us a little bit about the recipients of the 2021 scholarships and the Max Bacon Leadership Award recipient.
Great, thanks, Sarah. I'm honored to be here, and I'm certainly honored as I've looked at the Zoom screen. I see that we have some of our recipients and some of their parents, so welcome to all of you. So on behalf of the Education Committee, it really is my honor to help to present these awards. And as Sarah had already mentioned earlier, the scholarships are funded through the annual sponsorship program. So we're really excited about that. So I'm just going to get to it because you want to hear the speaker as well as this. So I'm going to present the 3 scholarship award winners alphabetically. So don't think that one is chosen above the other one, but they're presented alphabetically. And I tell you what, this was a difficult choice, and we spent many hours vetting the scholarship applications as well as together as a committee to actually make the best decisions that we felt we could, because everyone was so deserving. So the first recipient of the SBA scholarship is Michael Herman. He's an international baccalaureate student at Campbell High School, and he plans to pursue degrees in business and pre-med at either the University of Georgia or Georgia Tech. Being a 3-sport athlete in baseball, swim, and tennis, he is driven to become an orthopedic doctor and specialize solely in sports injuries, ultimately owning his own practice. He's been involved in many activities at both Campbell and in the community, and these include, and these aren't everything, because if I included everything that these young people did, we'd be here till midnight. So these are a few things. He is on the Principals Advisory Board. He's on the IB Leadership Core team. He participates in the Chick-fil-A Leadership Academy, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. He served as a juror with the Cobb County Peer Court. Now that sounds like fun. He participates in the Cobb County Special Needs Prom as an Olympics volunteer and with Smyrna Young Life. So let's congratulate Michael Herman. Our next recipient is Giselle Rodriguez, who is a student at Osborne High School and plans to attend Kennesaw State University and pursue a major in business and communication and minor in environmental science. Ms. Rodriguez has exhibited her entrepreneurial spirit beginning as a small child when she made bracelets, pencil pouches, pens, moving up to clothing, painting, makeup, at a very young age, and ultimately started her own choreography business at the ripe age of 14. She stated in her essay that her passion for business is accompanied by her passion to do something good for the world, whether it ends up being wildlife rescue center, eco-friendly cars, or clothing. She's also been involved in the school and the community, which include 5 years in chorus and band, and she sang the national anthem at a Braves game. I don't even sing the national anthem in the shower. She's been part of JROTC, including Honor Guard, Student Government, Science Olympiad, GLINC, maybe, Generation Latina Club, and she has been a choreographer for many quinceañeros. So let's congratulate Giselle. And our third SBA scholarship awardee is Layla Somerville, and she's graduating from Campbell High School and plans to attend either Louisiana State University, Auburn University, or Spelman College and pursue a major in business and computer science. She wants to be an example for young Black girls who question their ability to go into the STEM field. In her essay, she stated that engaging in technology is engaging in the future, and her hope is to someday be a part of a creation that will positively impact all people. Some of her involvement includes being a JROTC squad leader, Future Business Leaders of America, where she serves as secretary, National Honor Society, National Beta Club, 21st Century Leaders, Habitat for Humanity, and Keep Smyrna Beautiful. So let's congratulate Layla and all of the SBA Scholarship Award winners again. Our final award is the A. Max Bacon Leadership Award, and Max sends his regrets. He wasn't feeling well today, so he decided he couldn't come and grace us with his humor and honor and everything. But so the Max Bacon Leadership Award is given to a Campbell High senior, because that's where Max went to school, who demonstrates outstanding commitment and service to the school and community. This year's recipient is Taylor Dax, and he unfortunately is not on our Zoom today because he's at a tennis tournament. Dax is considering the University of Georgia, University of Florida, Indiana University, and University of South Carolina, where he plans to pursue a double major in marketing and international business. He stated that throughout his high school career, he has been driven and motivated by friends and family to become the best version of himself that he could be. He is an Eagle Scout. He's a member of the Youth Leadership Committee at the Cobb Youth Leadership, and he's a proud International Baccalaureate Diploma candidate at Campbell High. And those are just a few ways that he's shown devotion to providing leadership and service in his community, as well as developing himself to become successful in years to come. Additionally, he serves on the IB leadership team, National Honor Society. He's received the Georgia Seal of Biliteracy, the International Skills Diploma Seal, Model UN, and like I mentioned, he serves on the tennis team. So let's congratulate Taylor Dax for receiving the A. Max Bacon Leadership Award. And it really is our honor to continue to award students. And I'm thrilled that some of our students are on the Zoom as well as their parents. So let's recognize the students and their parents for a job well done.
Thank you so much, Barb, and congratulations to everyone. I know that each year it is really rewarding and exciting to see what the students in Smyrna are doing and the quality of students that come from our community, and we are thrilled as an organization to support you. Next, I'd like to turn to our keynote speaker today, and we have Scott Sweeney joining us, who is the chairman of the Georgia Board of Education. Scott was appointed by Governor Brian Kemp to serve on the board representing the 6th Congressional District. He previously served an 8-year term as an elected member of the Cobb County Board of Education. Through his experience working in private business as a senior manager, business developer, and business owner, Mr. Sweeney is a multidisciplined business advisor and strategist. He's a senior business advisor at In Prime Legal, a business law firm. He previously was the senior director of brewery, retail, and real estate for the Pabst Brewing Company, where he led the firm's new brewery development from inception to construction through project completion. Mr. Sweeney has served as a board or committee member on several national, state, and local nonprofit organizations. He's a frequent speaker at industry and educational events and an author of articles on industry publications and education within the Cobb community. He and his wife and 2 children reside in East Cobb, and we are thrilled to have you here in Smyrna today to share some of your insight on the education here in Georgia, and I'm sure we'll have time for some questions at the end for everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm looking at this picture here, and believe me, this was not staged. It's mere coincidence that I have the same tie on. First of all, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here before the Smyrna Business Association. I've attended a number of these events in the past, and this is a fantastic group. I really, really appreciate everything that you do. Sarah, thank you for the gracious invitation. Barbara, for the invitation and coordinating my appearance here. I want to acknowledge the SBA Scholarship Award winners, Michael, Giselle, and Layla. I mean, what a testament to everything that they've done. And of course, well representing Campbell High School. And then lastly to Taylor Dax and Max Bacon Award winner. When Barbara asked me to come here today, the first thing I asked her was, do I have to follow Max? Those of you in this room know what I mean. And I'm sorry that Max isn't here today. I do want to leave a lot of time for some Q&A, but I've also had a chance to talk with some of you here in the room to kind of find out what it is that you are interested in. And I also know that I have some friends in the room that have been engaged in education for a long time. Of course, Irene, we have you, and you've been incredibly engaged with PTAs in a leadership role for a long time, and you and I have worked together on many, many issues as well. Kathy, with your experience as a former member of the Marietta Board of Education, thank you very much for your service. Tony, you and I have been engaged for a long time with a lot of different things relative to initiatives in the Cobb County School District. And I'm sure others in the room have as well. I'd like everybody to raise your hands. Come on, everybody get your hands up real quick. All right. And I just want to thank you for the answer to the question you didn't know. That question is, education is important, isn't it? Okay, it is. And I think we unanimously agree. And a lot of people say, well, Scott, how did you get to this role? And I'll tell you, it was through a barbecue. And when I say a barbecue, I never had anything on my radar screen about getting involved from being on an elected member for the Board of Education in Cobb County. And it was when there was a vacancy that some residents knew about. And also that vacancy, that somebody that was going to run actually was then going to move out of the community. And then they came up to me and they said, would you be interested? The first and most important vote that I had to get was that of my wife's. My wife, Sandy, is amazing. And I'm very, very thankful that she allows me to do what I get to do. Education has always been important in my family. My father's a graduate from Notre Dame. My mother's a graduate from St. Mary's in Chicago. They moved to California, we had 6 children. I'm the eldest of 6 children, all with college degrees, except one. One of my brothers unfortunately passed away at a very, very young age. I've lost my father to addiction. I've lost my mother to addiction. I've lost a sister to addiction. These are just amazing, amazing tragedies. And, but at the same time in our family, education was never sacrificed. Education was never sacrificed. It was really, really important. I'm blessed to have 2 beautiful sons that are products of Georgia Public Schools. They were in East Cobb, so they've had the pleasure of attending Soap Creek Elementary School, Dickerson Middle School, and Walton High School. And my eldest son is now a National Naval ROTC Award Scholarship winner and attending Embry-Riddle Aeronautic University, where he will then serve a term as a commissioned officer in the U.S. Navy. But education is really, really important. After serving 8 years in Cobb County, where I was the past chair and was very, very involved with budget issues, particularly after the Great Recession, and Irene and I worked closely on a number of those things. I lost an election, and then Governor Brian Kemp appointed me to the State Board of Education. My peers elected me as the chairperson last year and re-elected me as the chairperson this year. A lot of people want to know, what does the State Board of Education actually do? Well, at the end of the day, it's a lot different than being on a local Board of Education. Kathy and I were talking about this. When you're a member of a local Board of Education and you go to the grocery store, it ends up being a 1 or a 2 hour trip. And the reason is everybody knows who you are. As a member of the State Board of Education, I enjoy a little bit more anonymity. So I can go to the grocery store and not be interrupted as much, but I still have friends, of course, that are close and near and dear to education. At the end of the day, you know, we do some really, really important work. The State Board of Education is organized by congressional districts. There are 14 congressional districts in the state of Georgia, and there is one member appointed by the governor to a 7-year term for each of those congressional districts, and they're staggered terms, so they intentionally overlap a little bit to ensure some continuity in the leadership of the State Board of Education. We work alongside an elected superintendent. So Richard Woods is the superintendent for the state of Georgia for schools, K-12 public schools, and has an immense responsibility running the Georgia Department of Education that has the largest budget allocation in the state of Georgia, over $20 billion, serving almost 1.9 million students at 159 counties, 180 different school districts, not counting state charter schools, not counting individual charter schools, and so forth. So what does the board do? The board is responsible for managing policies that are often recommended by the superintendent, and oftentimes in response to legislation that has recently been passed. And we're constantly looking at and updating and previewing things with regard to policy. We're responsible for approving the budget, but the budget actually first goes through the governor's office, then it goes to the legislators, and then after the legislators go ahead and approve the budget, then it comes to us to approve. And the state funding level for schools is typically about, I'm going to call it about a 50% number, maybe 48%. The local funding is about 48%, and depending on the school, that federal side on the funding can vary between 2 and I'd say up to 4%. And the federal government gets tremendous leverage for that 2 to 4% investment. Okay, so one of the things that we are looking for is relief from some of these requirements on an occasional basis. How many of you heard about the end of course tests and a recent decision that was made by the State Board of Education with regard to the weight of the end of course tests? How many of you heard about that? Okay, some of you. So that testing arrangement with regard to end of course tests or milestones was actually weighted fairly heavily at about a 20% level, all right? But in a COVID pandemic environment, how does that accountability look? When you have kids that have not even been in a classroom, such as in Clayton County. When you have kids that have not been in a classroom in DeKalb County until just recently, where they're starting to roll students in. How does that look for a mom, a single mother, whose only choice for education is pulling her car into a parking lot and attaching to a hotspot, and she has a high schooler, a middle schooler, and an elementary schooler in the same car, all on computers or on phones, trying to learn? Okay, it's very different across the entire state of Georgia. And so when you're charged with making decisions about what's in the best interest of children, that is the only decision. What is in the best interest of children? And you have to do it with the available resources. Now, thankfully, Georgia is not what I would call a top-down state. There is tremendous protections that are given to communities that basically have Georgia as, we'll call it, local control. For example, as the pandemic was coming on board and we were trying to take a look at what does school look like in the fall, there was some interest perhaps in mandating a school start date that would be post Labor Day. And that decision was, okay, let's see what the State Board of Education can do with this. We don't have the authority to mandate a start date.
Yeah,
it's that simple. Thankfully, that decision is left up to the local boards of education and their respective superintendents. So when we take a look at all these things, we're just trying to, number one, stay out of the way, try to make the right decisions for students, and make sure that they have the tools and the resources available. I recently had a breakfast with the State Board of Education with Governor Brian Kemp. And Brian has done what I feel is a remarkable job opening Georgia up to allow commerce to essentially continue. As a result, Georgia's unemployment rate is far better than most any other state in the union. But above and beyond that, he is absolutely focused on education and also led the charge to award the $1,000 bonus to teachers that was just approved by the State Board of Education. And I believe that the teachers and others will start to receive that $1,000 bonus here really quick. We talked about policy and rules a little bit. Another big category that the State Board of Education is charged with is standards. The standards were just recently revised and approved for health. Currently, the math standards are up for a 30-day posting. So if you have any questions or concerns and you want to take a look at what those math standards look like going forward, I encourage you to go to the Georgia Department of Education website and see the information there and weigh in with your comments. The State Board of Education is also the actual Board of Education for the state schools. And the state schools are for the Atlanta School of the Deaf and Blind and so forth. And what we do is we act as, just like the local Cobb County or the Marietta Board of Education, we act as the direct Board of Education for those schools. We're also charged with approving charters. So we have a number of different charter schools across the state. But when we have the Georgia Department of Education gets applications or petitions from local education authorities, those are the school districts, it then floats up to the Georgia State Board of Education through the Georgia Department of Education, where we have to actually determine whether we will or will not approve a brand new charter school. So that's another role that we have. Legal, the one thing that we also do as State Board of Education, we're responsible for hearing appeals. And these are appeals with regard to student disciplinary or teacher disciplinary matters. So those are other items that we deal with at the State Board of Education. Georgia Department of Education personnel. We approve or do not approve recommendations from the superintendent regarding appointments to the Georgia Department of Education. We talked about legislation and adapting, talked about bonuses. One thing I know that's foremost on everybody's mind is the pandemic and learning loss. And one thing that was incredibly dismaying to me was seeing how many students we lost in enrollment statewide. Statewide, we lost nearly 3 to 4% of students statewide. Most of the student loss as far as enrollment occurred in K through 3 grades. Okay. And K through 3 are the critical years where literacy is developed. And unfortunately, if you lack those skills and being able to read, and then you're coming back to school and returning, we all know how much more challenging that is going to be for those students in a learning environment. Now, with the recent money that has been delivered to the state of Georgia, much of it hasn't even been allocated yet. A lot of it hasn't been spent. I mean, schools are trying to figure out how they're going to spend the money. Well, additionally, I have another $1.9 trillion package that was awarded. Much of that is coming to the state of Georgia as well. And so I know that what districts are trying to figure out is how can they close the learning gap? And again, this is decisions that are made at the local level. And I think you're going to see, and again, I don't have any background, I don't have any promises from anybody, but I think you're going to find schools that are, or districts that are going to try to make summer learning options more widely available. Now, they cannot mandate attendance during the summer. Okay, so that's going to be a challenge because a lot of people are still going to enjoy their time off, summertime and so forth. And it's going to be on a volunteer basis. But I can tell you, after speaking with so many families, is that a mom or dad who's at home trying to work from home while simultaneously being the technical wizard to help their children with a Zoom classroom environment. It's not only challenging for the families, it's incredibly challenging for the students. Because how much can you actually learn, virtually? And there's gonna the learning that's really occurred here, I think, has become, what have we learned from the digital delivery of education? And what does that look like going forward? I've heard Superintendent Ragsdale talk with regard to virtual learning, and I think he is of the mindset that there's going to be some form of virtual and in-person learning. Yet at the same time, I think everyone recognizes that the best form of learning is face-to-face. And I know it's a goal of the superintendent at the state level, that the Board of Education want to do everything and anything that we can to get students back into a face-to-face environment as soon as possible. One thing I take a look at too, though, is that I really think that the flexibility of having some hybrid model does make a lot of sense. For example, think of a student in the arts, maybe a remarkable dancer, for example, and then has events that they must participate in and be away. Is how can they still keep pace with their classroom, yet still avail themselves of these opportunities? But it's not just the dancer, it's the sports person. I mean, it could be some specific club or something like that. And in my personal view, a lot of learning also takes place outside of the classroom. And I really, really look forward to a day where, we can have families have a bit more flexibility, yet at the same time have the tools that allow students to go ahead and stay on pace at their schools as to the best of their ability. So that's just kind of a quick run through a whole bunch of different stuff. And I would love to answer any questions that people may have. Yes.
Scott, you talk about the tools and the ability for flexibility through digital learning. But what does that look like realistically with metro counties versus the rest of the state? And does the State Board of Education support, or are they able to give any resources to those rural areas that may not have the same accessibility that the metro counties have?
That's a great question, Sarah. The answer is that there is wide disparity with regard to broadband access. In talking with Governor Kemp, the funds that are coming in now will allow broadband access to be accelerated. It was already really at the forefront of what they wanted to do, but a lot of this is through private enterprise. Okay, and you also have to have demand, and people have to pay for the services. And so it's pretty complex. It's not just a matter of simply putting in a line in something, it's finding subscribers and making it economically viable. So the answer is that I know that it will be accelerated, but how soon and in what areas and how they're going to do it, I don't have those details right now. Okay, and I'll give you another example. I have a friend, his name is Alan Ford. Alan Ford is the superintendent in Tolliver County. And if you look for Tolliver County, it's not spelled the way I just pronounced it, but that's how you pronounce it. Imagine an entire county that only has a student enrollment that's less than 200 students. The entire county, okay? And what does learning look like in that county? What does transportation look like in that county? What does funding look like in that county? Alan is not only the superintendent, he is the principal of the high school. He's the principal of the middle school. He's the principal of the elementary school. And I've said this often, for all I know, he probably mows the lawns. So I mean, he's got his hands full. All right. And so when you take a look at things call it a voucher bill, for example, and let's say that one student was to be removed from that school and go to some private school, for example, what does that do on a proportional basis to his funding? Okay. Small districts have a harder time absorbing that than a large district. If you take a look at Gwinnett County, for example, has more than 180,000 students. Imagine that, 180,000+ students. That's running a huge city. All right. Cobb County, the FTE, they call it full-time equivalency, and that's really an enrollment number. I think it's about 115,000. Is that about right? 107. 107. I know it's come down, and it's come down because of the COVID pandemic and a reduction in the enrollment there. But education looks a lot different in different counties. Clayton County, as I mentioned, I mean, they have not returned to face-to-face education to the best of my knowledge. Okay, and fortunately here in Cobb County, with the leadership for Dr. Grant Rivera and under Chris Ragsdale, families were able to avail themselves of face-to-face options as well as virtual options. I think the challenge for the teachers is determining how they're going to deliver instruction in an environment where they have to teach simultaneously to a virtual audience and to an in-person audience. And so that will continue to be a challenge with some of the virtual models that we look at. Irene. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Nick.
Scott, you just mentioned teachers, and while I know it's not under the direct purview of the State Board of Education, anybody who's an advocate for public education has to be concerned about the teacher pipeline, retention, and recruitment. Any thoughts or observations about that? How do you see that across the state or some areas not impacted as greatly as other areas?
Yeah, the question is how the teacher pipeline is currently. I'm just going to kind of paraphrase it to make it simple. The teacher pipeline is a significant challenge. In the University of Georgia system, do you know that there was only one AP physics teacher? Graduate. One teacher for the entire state of Georgia graduating to be able to teach AP physics. That is, and so when you take a look at how many AP programs that we have across the entire state, if one person, two people, three people retire, okay, that's great, but does that one person want to work in that community? And can they get the right deal, the right supplement, and being in line with all the other teachers? I realize that's kind of a unique example, but it also goes to show you the challenges that we have across the entire state. The teacher pipeline is a concern. There are teachers that are not encouraging their family members and their children to become teachers, okay, because they've recognized the challenges and how difficult it is. One of the things I know Governor Kemp has done is trying to expand the teacher pipeline. And we have the Professional Standards Commission that actually takes a look at and reviews credentials, looking at modifications, allowing some individuals to come into the classroom with particular qualifications. I don't know what those are going to be at this point in time, but to essentially enhance or allow more people to come in. Another thing is that we have many teachers that have retired and that they are capped, and they can basically, we kind of refer to them as the 49%ers, is an ability to allow them to come back into the classroom and collect more than that 49%, for example. So there's a lot of different options that I know are being looked at. The other thing is that Georgia has granted broad flexibility to districts through the contracts that we have, that each individual local education authority has with the state of Georgia. For example, the Cobb County School District is on what they call the strategic waiver school system. And when they apply for waivers, they're applying for waivers with from the Georgia Department of Education. It gives them some broad flexibility. So I anticipate we'll start to see more of those applications come through when the applications are renewed or new applications are submitted. Yes.
Hi, how are we, COVID's probably a whole other budget challenge, but talking to teachers and hearing how they're paying for so much out of pocket, they're paying for lunches, they're paying for school supplies, especially in some of the districts or individual schools where they might have more needs with the students. How is that being addressed? Because that's another reason why some folks are looking at other opportunities, because they can't afford to get teachers.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the question is revolving, I'm going to kind of break it down to teachers supplementing the cost of certain things within their own classrooms. Is that okay? That's something that's gone on for a long time. And I would like to say that it's because of the goodness and the gracious of the hearts of educators, because their hearts really are in it. I mean, they want to look for, they view these children as their own. And they want to do everything and anything that they can to take care of them. The challenge is that there's only so many dollars to go around. And, the only way that you're going to find more revenue would be through higher taxation. That would be, one thing, and I'm not advocating for that, but that's one thing. Another thing would be more money put into the education budget and for targeted purposes such as you described. Yet at the same time, those dollars that go into the education budget are also weighed against infrastructure and every other thing that the state of Georgia has to take care of. And believe me, I mean, I know that everybody wants to do more. There's just certain limitations on what they can do, and it's usually the budget restriction. Any other questions? Barb.
Well, speaking of budget restrictions, but before I get to that, I want to recognize that we have Dr. Walker and Assistant Principal Josh Ford, Principal and Assistant Principal at Campbell High School with us. So that, I know that what they're doing is amazing, and I really appreciate all that. They're right over there in that corner.
I
Right
got to
there.
work on my eyes here. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to see you.
But my question is, it's been announced, because I have a Campbell High student, so I know, focusing in on that, but it's been announced that next year, if the virtual option is selected by the students, that they won't be Campbell High School students. They will be the Virtual Academy students. So they won't be Campbell graduates. So my real question is, how is that going to affect funding for Campbell High?
Well,
or whatever school?
The question is how does funding follow the student in regard if they're actually attending a virtual school? And the fact is it follows the student. It follows the student. So if there is a broad number of students that would actually go to these virtual schools, that money is going to follow them to the virtual school, because the virtual school has to get paid as well. One of the things that I was concerned about from a budget standpoint as well with the enrollment drop that we had was that when you have an enrollment drop, and Tony, I think you mentioned 107,000 on the FTE count, is that when an enrollment drop like in Cobb County falls from 111,000 or 112,000 to 107,000, you're talking about a 4,000 or a 7,000 student drop. And then the state is contributing, I'm just going to ballpark this number, about $5,000 per student. Well, 5,000 times 5,000 adds up. It's a lot of money. So the thing is that funding is also done in arrears. So the counts were done in October. They're again done in the springtime, but the enrollment will not have picked up. And yet we anticipate that enrollment will grow in the fall by families having the decision to bring their students back into the classroom. And so you have funding based on 107,000 students, not on the 111,000 or the 112,000 that might show up. So that's another challenge that we're going to have as well. And I know that Governor Kemp is well aware of this. We've kind of talked about a make whole provision or something like that to address it with the pandemic. I'm not quite certain how that's going to shake out, but it's to be seen. Tony.
Everyone likes to find one-time uses for funds when you get one-time funds. Has the state considered issues like, personal devices? So for instance, Cobb had 30 or 40,000 personal computing devices that got funded and handed out to students. Has the state looked at how to build on that and expand the access to those personal devices to students using those one-time funds?
Were you at the last State Board of Education meeting? So it's a great question. And the question actually revolves, I'm just going to break it down into the ability to dedicate funds for specific purposes from the state level. Okay, and in this instance, and what Tony has described has to do with one-to-one devices. So the answer is we don't have the ability at the state level to do that. And again, because Georgia is a local control state, those decisions are actually determined at the local level, the local education authority. In addition to that, what we decided that we needed to do as a state board is to gather and have a dialogue and a conversation about kind of establishing some guidelines and some parameters under which the CARES Act funds can be used. And specifically this latest round, that $1.9 trillion, scares the heck out of me to think about that dollar amount, $1.9 trillion care package. We can't tell districts specifically how to use that money. They have broad flexibility. And so we can't say, for example, that you've got this block of money and the only thing that you can use it for is buying or purchasing one-to-one devices. We don't have that ability. Okay. Any other questions? And it looks like our time is about up. Are there any questions online, Nick? Okay, well, before we go, I just want to thank you and tell you what an honor it is for me to be here today. I'll hang around if you all have any further questions, but thank you, and thank you for your engagement in education, which I think is one of the most important initiatives that we have within the state of Georgia. And I'm just grateful for being here today, and thank you very much for allowing me to be so. Thank you.
Scott, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing with us. And as a thank you, the SBA is going to make a donation to Must Ministries for your time here today. So thank you for that. I do have a handful of door prizes to hand out today, but before I do, are there any members or sponsors who want to share an announcement with the group? No? Okay, well, I'm going to start first with a door prize for our Zoomies, if you will. Thank you, Nick. Let me share with you upcoming events. Thank you. Up on the slideshow. If you have not renewed and joined SBA for 2021, membership is $85 and you can join online. Here's some of our upcoming events. April 14th, we'll be having coffee and networking at the table. This will be an in-person only event. We do have 20 spots available, so please register on the website so that we can be sure that we are not overcrowding the space. It is free, but you can find the event registration on smyrnabusiness.org/events. On April 28th, we'll also be having coffee and networking. We'll announce closer to the date if that's going to be in person or virtual or both. And then May 6th is our next luncheon, and Mayor Norton will be our speaker, giving an update on Smyrna and the community and the business community here in Smyrna on May 6th. All right, let me turn to our Zoomies, if you will. I've got a trivia question for you that I have been waiting a while to ask. This is one of my favorite facts, and it is appropriate because it is Women's History Month. So for our Zoomies out there, type your answer in the chat box for a gift card from Main Event. So here is your trivia question. Name Smyrna's first and only female mayor. I don't know if Mary Moore is on. I'm sure she knows. You might have to Google it. That's why I gave it to the Zoomies. Do we have? Nick, I can't see all the answers on here. Okay. Should we put them in the chat box? Let's see here. Oh, here we go. K. Eller. Lorena Pruitt. That's right. Lorena Pace Pruitt was mayor of Smyrna in the 1940s. And get this, at that time, Smyrna had less than 2,000 residents. The budget was about $25,000 and her salary was $25 a month. Isn't that amazing? Okay, for our in-person groups here, I have 3 gift cards from Christy Hyatt, who has also laid out your little desserts on the table here. So for our in-person folks, since it's our education luncheon, I wanted to do an education-related trivia question. So we have 3 schools in Smyrna that serve high school students. We have Osborne High, Campbell High, and Whitfield Academy. So name the mascots of the 3 schools, and for each one who names one, we'll give a gift card. Campbell Spartans, Osborne Cardinals, and Whitfield Wolf Pack. So we've got the Campbell Spartans, the Osborne Cardinals, and the Whitfield Wolf Pack. So thank you everyone for being here today. Please check your email and social media for upcoming events. We are looking forward to having more events in person and seeing everyone's smiling faces in the future. So thank you all for coming. Have a great rest of your day.